The stories contained in this podcast are the recollections of the guests we've invited onto the show. We are merely an outlet for people to share their truths, and we accept no legal responsibility for the stories contained herein.
I'm Kendra Sheets.
And I'm Rich Gill.
And this is Enough, a podcast which aims to shine light into the darkened corners of the music industry while discussing the ways we can and should improve ourselves and, in turn, our community. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Enough's podcast, episode 1.5. We received an overwhelming amount of feedback from Savvy's episode, and we wanted to thank every single person for taking time to subscribe, follow, like, and most importantly, just taking time to listen to a survivor story. We know that it's not easy. We know that it's not comfortable to sit through these type of things. So we really do appreciate it. In light of the conversations that have been sparked by our first official episode with a guest, we decided to do a follow-up episode before our next interview.
We want to remind everyone that the main goals of this podcast are not to call out or cancel people. We are hoping that our work encourages people to take accountability for their actions and that they are able to figure out ways to come back from that if possible. One of the things that we talk about is restorative justice. And for those of you who are not familiar with that, restorative justice refers to an approach to justice that seeks to repair harm by providing an opportunity for those harmed and those who take responsibility for the harm to communicate about and address their needs in the aftermath of a crime. It doesn't necessarily have to be a crime, but some sort of harm. Something to keep in mind with that, restorative justice can never work if the assailant doesn't take responsibility for their actions. And when we're talking about any form of abuse, any form of restorative justice, it needs to be survivor-centered. So in some cases, restorative justice is not an option if the victim survivor wants nothing to do with their assailant. That's their choice. That's just the way it goes sometimes. And even if you do all the right things as a perpetrator of harm, take accountability, go to therapy, get sober, make amends, et cetera, there are still people who aren't going to support you after the fact. That's just, again, that's how it goes. That's their right. That's a consequence of causing harm to another person. And to reiterate, this is not you being canceled because you're still allowed to go about your life, but people can choose whether or not to support you. People bring up the argument, well, anyone can make up anything. So what about the people who are lying? To be perfectly blunt, the hard data for false accusations of sexual assault is somewhere between 1% to 2%. The statements from people who are accused of assault almost always overwhelmingly say the victim is lying. You can look at Bill Cosby, Harvey Weinstein, Marilyn Manson, Ryan Adams, Harm Our Superstar, all of them for examples of that. The math doesn't add up. You can't say believe victims, except in this case, and still be an ally. You can't. It doesn't work. The other thing we talk about is transformative justice. Transformative justice is a series of practices and philosophies designed to create change in social systems. You hear a lot about this when talking about racial disparities and racism in general. That should ultimately be the goal, everyone's goal, when it comes to this stuff. What can we do to change the way society sees sexual abuse, assault, harassment, etc.? A lot of this is a product of rape culture. Which for those of you who are not familiar with rape culture is a society or environment whose prevailing social attitudes have the effect of normalizing or trivializing sexual assault and abuse. That's straight out of the Oxford Dictionary. This is something we see every day. It's the way that women are not asked the same questions as men on celebrity red carpets. It's happening in the Olympics right now with women's uniforms versus men's uniforms, and how women are sexualized in a way that men are not. It's telling a 7-year-old girl that she's going to have to fight the boys off with a stick when she gets older. It's opening a fucking chicken restaurant called Side Chick and having an item on the menu called Legs for Days, which is an actual item in an actual restaurant that just opened up in Minneapolis. And while a lot of this may not seem like a big deal in itself, when you take all these things together, plus countless others, you have a society that only sees women as sexual objects And in some cases, you end up with men who think it's okay to rape an unconscious woman behind a dumpster. Obviously, there's more to play when that happens, but it's all related. It's all part of the same system. To go off on a little rant about this, ultimately, all of us hopefully got involved with punk rock or indie rock, whatever you want to call it, because we didn't fit in with the cool kids, or we looked at the jocks and popular kids and realized that what they were doing was gross and we didn't want to be a part of it. We got involved with this because it was supposed to be inclusive, non-judgmental, anti-racist, anti-sexist, anti-homophobic. 7 Seconds put out a song called Not Just Boys Fun in 1984, railing against the macho overtones of hardcore and pointing out that women are just as involved as men in the scene. In the 37 years since that came out, we had Riot Girl, we had Queercore, we had Babes in Toyland and L7. And while today there are arguably more queer and femme bands than ever before, there's also a large contingent of bands and their fans that have that same jockish popular kid mindset, or as a friend of ours so astutely pointed out, frat guys masquerading as punk rockers. Cutting the sleeves off your shirt and saying you love the first 3 Ramones records doesn't make you punk rock if you're still walking around making gay jokes and being a creep to women. That's not the scene we want to be a part of, and we'll do whatever it takes to change it for the better and make sure everyone feels safe. And I'll wrap this up with just a personal thought. Over the last several months of speaking publicly about this stuff, I've been cyberbullied, threatened, I've been named in a cease and desist letter, and I've had false stories circulated about me because of conversations just like this. Sometimes I wish I could be quiet and just sit in the back like so many other people do, but if we did that, nothing would change. And still nothing might change, but if it doesn't, at least we know that we tried by having these conversations.
We've spent the last week reading emails, DMs, and the awful, dreaded comment section of so many different posts across the internet. And we wanted to openly address a few thoughts that came across in all of those ways of correspondence. The first one, it was noted in a number of comments that men can be victims too. And we want to say 100%. That is correct. Men can be victims. However, the majority of victims worldwide, not just in the US, but worldwide, are women and children. And that's due to the power dynamic. There are men who are unfortunately victims of abuse. Yes, 100%. But it's just not as common. And the men that are victims of abuse are usually victims of abuse at the hands of other men. There's also some commentary about how we're trying to propagate cancel culture or seek revenge. We want to remind our listeners that asking someone to take accountability for their actions is not about revenge. It's about attempting to heal harm that was done. I'm going to go off on a limb here, off on a tangent rather, and quote my current favorite I Think You Should Leave sketch, because it changes like every single day, maybe every hour. And of course, it's the sloppy steaks. And the quote is, "I'm not a piece of shit. I used to be. People can change." Obviously, if you see the sketch, you kind of know where we're going with this. It is a little bit more lighthearted than this normally what we cover, but I think it does make a really good point. While obviously all of that is in jest, people do change. People have the ability every single day to change who they were before and take in new information. I've done and said things that I would be absolutely appalled to do and say at 30, almost 5, when I was 22 years old. People do change. We grow up and we mature. It's kind of like a choose your own adventure book. Something gets presented to you. Do you want to be that same douchey 22-year-old? Or do you want to show that in the past so many years, you've actually grown up and you've learned some things? That's what we're asking people to do, to be better, to be the change that they want to see in the world. I found a wonderful quote on an Instagram account with the IG handle justicejournalism_ that I think really summarizes our thoughts on the matter. And the quote is as follows: "Asking for someone to take accountability can be conceived as revenge to someone who is unwilling to reconcile with themselves, who disassociates. But accountability is an act of love. Accountability gives one the opportunity to grow by doing what is right. Anyone who claims that accountability is revenge is emotionally stunted and immature. And most importantly, they are a dangerous person." And we agree with that 100%. Again, accountability is not after revenge. We're not trying to cancel anyone. We're asking people to take in this information that's being presented, think about what's being said here and really focus on trying to be better every single day. Lastly, there's a meme that's circulating where it's a cartoon of two people in a crowd who are looking at a band on stage. And the woman says to the man, "Isn't that dude a known abuser?" And the man responds, "Everyone really likes his band. Nothing can be done." Popular, talented, well-liked, well-known people can use their positions of power to abuse others. As Rich had said, it's exceedingly easy to use a position of power to get what you want from someone. Examples: Drake, R. Kelly, Kevin Spacey, Louis C.K. We can keep going. We're not going to, but we could. The list is exceedingly large. We all follow the social media accounts of the people who make the music that we listen to, put out the records that we buy, and sell the tickets to the shows that they book, which we attend. The next time you try to rationalize that, it's just a business issue, no big deal, or I don't know this person, I only like their music, it's not that personal, you are funding that person's abusive behavior. Of course, you're able to act however you choose, but please know, in this case and in others, your actions do have consequences. Your decision to be an enabler comes with a body count. We don't have to be the man and the woman in the meme that we talked about, lamenting that nothing can be done. There are things we can do. This is the time for everyone to use their personal platform to publicly denounce sexism, misogyny, and the behaviors that breed and perpetuate predators. Help us by asking bands, label owners, venue owners, booking agents, and managers, and anyone else we haven't mentioned in this giant list to please speak up about these issues. We're going to keep going and doing this, but we don't want to be the only two that are doing it publicly. We need your help and we need their help too.
We've only just begun to use this podcast as a platform for survivor victims who wish to share their stories, but our goal is to bring these conversations to the forefront. This can't succeed unless we're all in this together. And from the amount of response we've gotten from the first episode, people want this. People want these conversations. It's long overdue, and we're all a part of it. Enough is a podcast centering on abuse, harassment, and assault in the music scene. To help get the word out, please like or subscribe and share with your friends. If you have been on the receiving end of harm from someone, be it artist, venue owner, audience member, or someone else, and would like to share your story on a future episode, please reach out to us at thisisenoughpodcast@gmail.com. All correspondences are kept confidential.